Yeah, I think the thing I would probably go back and maybe not change the most, but the advice I would give is just to be open-minded, because there's not necessarily just one way to do something. There's often lots of alternatives.
From Coordinate Sport, it's The Drive Phase, a show about sports founders, leaders and experts and the stories behind their business journeys. Our guest on this episode is Rob Brown, Director of ISF. Rob is on a mission to improve the employability of sports students and fast-track them into their ideal career. Having first-hand experience of what it takes to forge a successful career in the sports coaching industry, Rob has used this to develop a more straightforward option for school leavers, partnering with London 2012 gold medalist Dame Jessica Ennis-Hill to launch the Institute of Sporting Futures, giving young people a fast track into a sports coaching career. During the episode, Rob talks us through the programme in detail, how it was developed and the long-term global vision. We also hear how Jess became involved and how she stays engaged with all the students. This impressive programme really challenges young people passionate about sport and coaching to reach their potential and forge a successful career in the industry. As usual on The Drive Phase, we hear about how sports shaped Rob's development and educational choices, and also his approach to leading a team and staying at peak performance. I really enjoyed sitting down with Rob. He shows us there's so much to learn from how building strong partnerships can positively impact the industry, as well as provide opportunities for young people. Hey Rob, welcome. Director of ISF, Institute of Sporting Futures. Rob is working towards, or I guess he's got a mission to improve the employability of sports coaching students, fast track their opportunities in the industry and get them into employment as quick as possible. Really looking forward to this one. Me and Rob know each other well, so hopefully we'll get on well on this interview. So yeah, thanks for your time, Rob.
Yeah, thanks for having me on. Really appreciate it, James. Great to have the opportunity to share my mission with like-minded people, I guess, and hopefully inspire some people to do the same.
Definitely. So I normally start off from the beginning, so try and get a little bit of background. So you grew up in the Northeast, is that right? Do you want to tell us a bit more about your early life coming up north?
Yeah, that's right. Northeast lad, born in Northumberland. Just like most young people, had aspirations of being top-level sport, that kind of stuff. Always played football, golf from being young, all the way through to 16, 17, 18, where I was playing some semi-professional football up in Scotland for a little while, and then kind of just went down the pathway to getting where I am now, I guess.
Just looking at school there, Rob, what was your kind of experience of, I guess, sport and PE in school? Was that obviously a naturally sporty person, but what was your experience like in primary school, would you say?
Yeah, on the whole, a positive one. Like you said, because I'm passionate about sport, I've always enjoyed sport. Sport was always a release for me. It was great that was like my 1 or 2 hours of the week that I could really let loose. And I guess PE in primary school was a good experience. But I guess like everything, knowing what I know now, it's one of those things that you would like the opportunity to improve given the chance. Well,
yeah, definitely. And then in terms of your I guess in terms of your family, is you coming from a sporty family, or is you kind of the standout, the exception, or was everyone sporty in the family?
Oh yeah, it was an exception. My brother probably wouldn't agree, but no, yeah, just like most families, Dad's always been interested in sport, loved his football. Younger brother's exactly the same, but I guess we're all of a muchness. We all just play because we really loved it, not because we really were going to make a big impact on the big stage. But it was, like I said, just I don't know, average family who just loved the sport, I guess. Mum maybe not so much when she was coming along to watch football on a Sunday morning, absolutely freezing cold, wet. But yeah, my dad was one of those.
What are you saying? You're the standout performer, though. You're the most talented in.
Yeah, if my brother's listening and my dad's listening, then yes, I'll just stand up.
Like that. So yeah, I mean, from excelling like football, golf. I know you got great handicap in golf and semi-pro football. How was your kind of path from that to get into coaching, or was it through? I guess we haven't really touched on the academic side. So yeah, I mean, leaving school, what was your next steps there when you left school up north?
It was one of those, like being from a small town called Alnwick, up in the northeast.
I know it's Harry Potter country, that right?
That's right, yeah. I used to work in the castle that Harry Potter was filmed, but that's a story for another day. But I guess being from Alnwick, I was kind of funneled into a certain pathway because of the opportunities that were available to me. Like where I was from in Alnwick, if I finishing my GCSEs, the only real option I had was to go on to A-levels or go into an apprenticeship as, I don't know, in a different industry, I guess, because there wasn't many apprenticeships available in the industry, in the sport industry I wanted to get involved in. Because if I wanted to go to another college, it was a case of a 30-mile trip daily. Do you know what I mean? So it was one of those things that was going to be kind of less appealing, I guess. So it was always a case of finished GCSEs, went into A-level PE, and then next step was university. Moved to Leeds, went to university in Leeds, and focused on sports coaching. I think we touched upon it before. Played a little bit of football when I was younger up in Scotland, but I guess it was kind of that decision time whether it was going to be one of those things that I really could push forward to make a career of, or whether I need to think about something else. And I guess coaching was kind of that next step for me. Like it was one of those that, I could probably still pursue being a player, but being a coach and still being involved in the industry was really, really important to me. So it kind of was that, like I say, that next option, that thing that could really continue that passion that I had in sport. But
University in Leeds, was it Leeds Beckett you went to?
Yeah, it was Leeds Met at the time, Leeds Beckett as it is now. Yes, I did sports coaching degree.
Yeah, so the sports coaching, sports science, Leeds Beckett's really well known for that. It's probably one of the standout unis. Do you think your degree program, do you think that kind of prepared you for a job in the industry, or looking back on it, how do you feel about that?
I'm not sure. I think flipping the question around, if I was given my time again, would I do exactly the same pathway knowing what I know now? Potentially not. Like you mentioned before, Leeds Beckett's really well known for its sports courses and the programs it delivers. But I think preparing me for the pathway that I've taken since university and the career I've gotten into, there's probably better ways that you could probably get to where I am now and maybe get there a little bit quicker. Not to speak disrespectfully with regards to Leeds, but I think one thing I would have looked for in a program is maybe a little bit more experience. I think work experience wise at university, if you didn't go out and find it yourself, is always difficult. And if I know a lot of students on my course didn't quite have that drive, so they never really got the experience. So really, you're coming out with your degree, and that's fantastic, but it doesn't look great to any employers. If I'm honest, just your degree, it's not enough to get you a full-time job, basically.
Something we hear a bit of an issue across the industry in terms of the academic quals. You've got all the theory side of things, the academic, but you may potentially through the university route you might not have as much practical experience. But again, that's university. It's like you're supposed to be learning on off your own back. So maybe going out and finding the placements could be part of that growing up and learning. Yeah.
And I think the industry standard qualifications is another thing. Like I said, coupled with the work experience, I was lucky in the fact that Leeds did offer the industry standard qualifications, level ones in football, football, rugby, cricket that I did. And then there was an option to do a level two, but it wasn't mandatory. So if you didn't have enough about you to go out and do those, or if you didn't have the funding to fund it, if you didn't have the money to fund it, basically, because that's difficult for students, and you're always going to miss out on that. So I guess you're already a step behind when you finish university, anyone who's got those industry standard qualifications or some kind of sports coaching experience.
Definitely. So, I mean, going back, so graduation from Leeds Beckett, was that 2007, 8? Am I right there?
Maybe 2006, maybe?
2006, yeah. So, I mean, from that point on, your pathway into coaching in terms of as a career, paid coaching, how did that work? Where did you find yourself when you graduated?
Yeah, so when I graduated, my wife now, partner at the time, was working over in Hull, so I moved over to Hull with her, and that's kind of where I'm based and have been based ever since. The plan was to be here for a year, but Hull's one of those places that when you're here for a year, then it kind of escalates and you're kind of stuck here. But I've loved my time here. But in terms of getting into coaching, it was a case of I worked at a factory to get money because obviously we had to live, and then I had to look for sports coaching experience. So I managed to get some coaching experience with the fantastic company called First Step Sports Group, who deliver PE in primary schools across the city. So I worked as a casual coach for them for a couple of years, and then it was a case of I had to make a really serious decision as to whether that was something I wanted to make a career out of, or whether I was going to have to look elsewhere. And luckily, the company were really good to me. I managed to get into part-time and then full-time work, and that's kind of the pathway. I mean, it's been a great pathway for me, fantastic learning experience to go from working, I don't know, say 4 or 5 hours a week to what I do now is something I'm really proud of.
Definitely. And would you say that's kind of a typical journey, or maybe maybe slightly different now? Do you think that's a typical journey into how to get into the industry?
Yeah, back then it probably was. I would say there wasn't too many other pathways. I don't think people would either do like A levels and then go to college, or I don't know, and then go to university. But I don't think it's one of those careers, if I'm honest, that you need to go to university for. And that's what I was mentioning before. If I had my time again to get to where I am now, that might be something I would consider, especially with the cost of university now to what it was then. It wasn't as expensive back then, so it wasn't quite as big a decision. But yeah.
Definitely. I think also as well, picking up on that, Rob, I know it's been done over the apprenticeship pathways and alternate ways in, which obviously weren't there at the time. But I guess that leads us on to the ISF and the Institute of Sport and Futures and how that was, I guess, how that was created. I know we've kind of touched on your journey.
Yeah.
I'm sure that's fueled the creation of it and the program. So do you want to give us a little bit of background about how it's kind of been created and what it is, ISF?
Yes, I mentioned before, I work with First Step Sports Group. I worked with a quality team there, and what we found is it's really difficult to find people in the industry who are either appropriately qualified or have enough experience to be employable, even coming off A-levels or out of a degree. So it's a case of people are finishing their degrees and then having to learn their trade, basically go get more qualifications. So what we did is we designed the Institute of Sport and Futures to try and combat that issue, I guess, that employment issue. So we designed a program that is going to couple work experience with industry standard qualifications with a diploma, meaning that those students coming off finishing sixth form or A-levels, A-level equivalent, are as far forward, if not further forward, than someone finishing a degree 3 years later, if that makes sense. So that's kind of why we designed the program, and that was the aim and the mission for it.
Just so I get it right, is it so it's post 16 after GCSEs they'd be enrolled onto your program? And how what's the kind of setup? Is it based in the colleges or schools? And how would someone find out about it or even know that that's an option for them?
Yeah, so exactly what you said. So Institute of Sport and Futures is a post-16 program that is based in secondary schools across the UK. Our main centre is in Sheffield. Our key ambassador is Jess Ennis, so that was the ideal city to start in.
Brilliant. Yeah, I know we'll definitely touch on that in a little bit. Yeah, so you got her involved.
Exactly, but yeah, so that's kind of the gist of it. Like, people will come to us once they've finished their GCSEs who are looking for a pathway into sports coaching, who are, might even still be interested in performance sport, but are looking for like an alternate route into employment or further education, I guess.
Brilliant. So looking at the program, someone's going to be attracted to it because they want to be a sports coach, and I'm guessing at 16 you don't really know what it entails, and you've probably been taught that you go to university, etc., maybe even doing a little bit of coaching in the community. I guess for our listeners, they'd be really keen to understand how that would fit in with them. So we're speaking to, obviously, our listeners are people in the industry now, either leading a team or leading a company, employing coaches, developing coaches. So from their point of view, how that impacts on them? Is it a way that they can get involved, or where do the students go after they finish the qualification?
Yeah, exactly. So let me just talk you through the basic typical week of an ISF student. So ISF students work 2 days a week on their level 3 diploma in sport and physical activities. The other 3 days a week are made up of work placement. So the students are coupled with some of our employer partners in the city that they're based, and they'll go out and learn from the more experienced and senior coaches. So essentially learning the trade from people who are already in the industry and who are already experts. So like I mentioned, we have quite a few employer partners in the city. So if I focus on Sheffield specifically, we've got lots of partners in Sheffield who are willing to take on our ISF students and give them that experience, because they are experiencing exactly the same problems with recruitment as I mentioned earlier. So they're able to mold their own employees, so they can already understand the company's policies, procedures, standards of delivery, that kind of stuff, meaning that when they finish their program, they're in a position to employ that young person or employ a couple of young people. So really it works for both ways. I mean, it's a really positive exit route for our students, but then it's fantastic for our partners to have ready-made employees.
So the 2-year course, at the end of that 2 years, there's exit routes, ideally straight into jobs. Is there anything else someone could do after the fact? I'm assuming obviously they take those skills elsewhere, but what's the other exit routes?
Yeah, so push 4 different exit routes for ISF. So
Okay.
one being employment in the UK. We also have employment abroad. So we, at the end of the 2 years, we have a global recruitment day where we invite some global recruiters in to observe our coaches delivering mini sessions, and then they get the opportunity to go coach, I don't know, maybe a summer abroad in America, UAE, China, somewhere like that. So that means for any students who are looking to kind of broaden their horizons or get away and experience a little different, and that's a fantastic opportunity. There is the opportunity to move on to university because the qualification holds UCAS points, so you can submit a university application. And then finally, a slightly alternate route to the others, we have a partnership with a company called Future Pro USA, who are interested in students who are particularly gifted and talented in a specific sport. So the program is an extremely inclusive program. You don't have to be a particularly talented athlete, but if we have anyone who is a particularly talented athlete, Future Pro USA will kind of guide them through that process to get a scholarship in America. So they have lots of colleges and universities in America that they partner with. So they'll kind of guide them through the application process, filming their clips, applying to the university, that kind of stuff. So
yes, all that extra support in there. And I guess before I go on, so I want to ask you about kind of the industry as a whole, like, as an employment market. But yeah, Jessica Ennis-Hill, Dame Jessica Ennis-Hill, she's back in the institute. I mean, what kind of involvement does she have day to day? And I mean, obviously, I'm assuming she's not teaching she's not a tutor on the course. I know she'll be busy, but yeah, how does she engage with the students and your team?
yeah, so Jess has been fantastic. Jess helped us develop the program as a whole at first. So we pitched her an idea. She come back with her ideas, and we kind of developed it from there. She's helped promote the program. So when we did our launch event down in Sheffield, she came down and engaged with a lot of the students in the school. We did some mini sessions. She dropped in a couple of classes, and then Jess is there throughout the year for support for the students. So a lot of it online because, like you mentioned, she's got a lot of commitments. She's got her own businesses. She's an entrepreneur. So it'll be good luck messages. We do meet and greet Zoom meetings a bit like this, where some of the students can come on and do Q&As, that kind of stuff. So she's always there for moral support. She's there in
That was
September.
my question, actually. I was going to say whether it's impacted you. Obviously, how we are now with schools being closed for a certain period of time and stuff. Is that like the Zoom meetings are out of necessity? I'm guessing it's just slightly changed from what you would want to do normally.
Yeah, exactly that. I mean, we have to kind of embrace it like everyone else has have to embrace it. And like I said, Jess is a fantastic role model for anybody. And the students getting the opportunity to have a quick chat with her, ask her questions about. So, for example, just before GCSE results day, we had a Zoom meeting with some of the kids, and they were asking her questions about how she dealt with pressure, because obviously she's competed at the Olympics, at slightly different type of pressure, but coping mechanisms, that kind of stuff. Some parents were asking questions. So it was fantastic opportunity for the students to get an insight into Dame Jess Ennis-Hill. And
cool. So in terms of, I know you're going to talk about September there. How does Jess get involved in September, or when the students come on board?
Yeah, so in September, what we do is we have a big welcome event, because the plan for ISF is to have a site all over the UK, and we're going to have big welcome events. But for right now, we have our welcome event in September, where she comes down, she welcomes the new students into the program. We do some small sessions to get involved in some of the classroom sessions, just to kind of help the students settle in as a familiar face and obviously as a role model, and then kind of just give them an idea of what's expected of an ISF student over the next 2 years. So.
Brilliant. So in terms of, I guess, the post-16 market, I know there's a lot of other, I guess, alternate education programs, maybe like potentially the wrong word, different ways of doing things. So what would you kind of compare ISF to? I know it sounds like it's really unique based on the employability side, but where would it be pitched otherwise, if that makes sense?
Yeah, I understand comparisons are difficult because, like you say, we are quite different. We're kind of like a mix of academic qualifications, industry standard qualifications, experience, kind of like apprenticeship, as you will, but in a slightly different setting. So it's difficult to do a comparison. Other programs that are similar to us that do experience and education are often focused a lot on performance. So
you're talking like the football
exactly,
academy programs,
football,
and the
exactly,
rugby,
yeah.
Right.
So you're only really going to be able to get involved in those if you're a particularly good footballer, rugby player, tennis player, gymnast, anything along those lines.
That's more like training to perform or play,
Exactly.
make the team, playing the college leagues, etc. Right.
Whereas the inclusivity of ISF is all about, you don't necessarily have to be a fantastic player to be a good coach. Does that make sense?
Yeah, 100%.
So
yeah. Just on that one, I know I want to ask you a bit more about the jobs market, I suppose, and I guess in terms of the sports coaching industry as a whole in the UK and further afield, what's kind of some of the myths and the misconceptions you might see out there, or you might even get it from parents if they're coming to potentially send their child onto the program. They're going to have some questions. They obviously want to look out for their child's future and ensure they've got opportunities there. What would you kind of pick out in terms of that?
Yeah, there are a few. I think, like you mentioned before, often with post-16 education, parents are the first one you really have to convince. The kids are pretty easy to see the program, to see the value in the program, just for what it is. Do you know what I mean? Yeah.
Yeah, I'd have to convince my parents that I could get a degree, or because the classic that's the kind
Yeah.
of tried
And
traditional path, isn't it? Go through A-Levels, go
exactly.
to do your degree, and that's what they know. Yeah.
The first question I get from parents is, right, tell me what jobs there are available to people in sport, or I don't know anyone who's got a job in sport, or you have to be such and such, you have to be so high level to get yourself a well-paid job in sport, because that's often really important to people. And I think that's from naive eyes without looking at it fully. Like, there are thousands and thousands and thousands of jobs, and ever growing in the sports industry, whether that be sport, fitness, coach, anything along those lines. So the ISF program, although yes, we focus quite a lot on sports coaching, we do a lot of primary school PE coaching in that context. But also with the diploma, you get a touch on all the other aspects, so the anatomy and physiology, sports psychology, where there are abundance of jobs across the UK and abroad. Because you'll probably know yourself, like the value of a UK education abroad is heightened somewhat.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, there's something that we keep mentioning on the podcast: the actual size of the market. So globally, sports coaching industry, recent study last year, I think it's even grown since in this year's study, is putting it at $12.3 billion globally and growing like 6% a year. So it's like there is an opportunity there, and I guess even people working in the industry probably don't realize it's that large. And yeah, British talent and British coaching, and especially around sport, is valued. Yeah.
And I think you just have to look at some of, without sounding too negative, some of the issues that we have in the country, which are going to provide opportunities moving forward. So we have a real issue in this country with childhood obesity, for example. Like, that in turn is going to provide opportunities for people to help those young people in the future to battle that.
Yeah, you kind of took one of my next questions. I mean, that's what I was going to ask you about, in terms of, I asked a few of the guests what their kind of take on fixing or making a dent in the childhood obesity challenge we're facing at the moment in the UK is. I mean, what would your take be on what we could do?
I'm not going to sit here and tell you that I'm going to be able to fix childhood obesity, because a lot of people have tried, and obviously we're not doing a fantastic job right now, but we are trying. I don't think it's a quick fix, if I'm honest, but one of the things I would say is I think it's time we started to let the people who've got a real passion and love for sport and physical activity actually take care of the delivery of, for example, PE in primary schools, secondary schools, that kind of stuff. Because often PE, and especially in primary schools, gets left to class teachers who might not necessarily have a keen interest in sport or PE, and it might be a secondary thought. So we really need to let those people who've got a passion for helping people get fit, understand sport and the rules, but also get involved in sport in a wider context as well, like links to clubs, that kind of stuff. We really need to start improving that aspect of delivery of physical education, I would say.
Yeah, I mean, that, as a whole, I mean, I don't normally ask this as well in terms of the industry, since you've entered it, to definitely even with clubs as well. So there's a lot of work being done with the national governing bodies, improving the coaching at clubs, especially grassroots level. All these type of opportunities. Maybe that's in the voluntary sector, but you can see the standard increasing. I mean, what's your take on when you've started to now? What's the biggest differences you see from in the industry as a whole?
Yeah, I think if I'm like, there's a big difference. One, in opportunities. Like I said, it's difficult for me to kind of gauge here, because I live in a completely different place to where I lived previously. I lived in a very rural area previously. Now I live in an urban area. So the opportunities are always going to be a little bit greater in an urban area, I would imagine. But I think the increase in funding, the increase of facilities is one of the things that I think really strikes me. The amount of new 3D pitches we have, all the secondary schools are being built as new facilities. So, I mean, it kind of makes me a little bit jealous as a 30-odd-year-old man now, looking back when we were playing on our muddy field, and our all-weather pitch was barely all-weather. Like, if it rained, you were still struggling because it was like sand-based. So
definitely a better experience for kids at grassroots level, yeah, rather than getting changed in the car and the car boot and all that type of stuff.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So I think we need to start harnessing and using those facilities properly, because now we've got the facilities, but the problem doesn't seem to be going away. So we now need to look at what the real problem is. So the facilities are there. Now we need to improve the delivery of physical activity, I would imagine.
In terms of like coaching or the coaching industry professionally, do you see a big difference from when you first started out as a casual coach to now in terms of opportunities, training, focus on certain things?
Yeah, exactly that. I think a lot of organisations have stepped up the game. There is an abundance of opportunities. I think you touched on it before, the amount of apprenticeships that are available now. Back when I was 16, 17, that would have been ideal for me. Or something like that would have been nice for me to, as an option at least. And now they're here, there and everywhere. The government's throwing tons of funding into apprenticeships. So that route is becoming ever more available, which I think is fantastic for people interested in sports. So.
Brilliant. Just on challenging, I know we always try and, for the listeners, obviously take something away, and obviously nothing's smooth sailing. We know we've got a massive challenge on our hands at the moment, just in society in general with what's happening. What's your kind of been your biggest challenges? I guess specifically with this program, trying to get it launched, or I guess is it educating the parents? What's it been for you?
If I'm honest, that's probably it. Not necessarily just that. Obviously, we've had the same issues to deal with as everyone's had to deal with. But I think convincing people that sport is a credible career choice for a lot of people, like convincing the students, but more importantly, convincing the parents that it's a credible, like you said before. I think my parents back then would have probably questioned and maybe supported me, but asked a lot of questions if I decided to do the routes that there are available now. But yeah, I think there are a couple of issues and there's still a few misconceptions around a lack of jobs in sport when there really isn't, I think. And that's one of the things that we are working on to, like I said, with our exit routes, to provide opportunities and showcase what the sports industry's got to offer.
Just changing angle a little bit now, just more on kind of your day-to-day, I guess, operations, business-wise. I don't know if you have a specific kind of approach to this or philosophy you live by or anything like that, but around, I guess, one big question that we have for the listeners is kind of how do you build a successful team? What goes into that? Build, I guess, maintain it as well. So I know you've obviously built out your team of tutors and the rest of your employees. How do you kind of keep that all together or successfully manage it?
Yeah, I think communication is extremely important. I feel like keeping a motivated and happy team is all about keeping them engaged, keeping people focused, giving people a goal to work towards, but then also having that open environment so that if anyone has any issues, they can always address them with you. I think that's one thing that we are at ISF. We're an open book, really. We like to discuss our issues. We have team meetings daily, especially during the pandemic. We had daily catch-ups, just one to make sure that we weren't going to go insane and only seeing four walls constantly when we're stuck in. Does that make sense? So you have that extra person to talk to, like that extra support network, and having that support network. So yeah, just being nice and open, but also trying to keep focus, keep everyone with a goal in mind. Like having the mission of the organization up on the wall is really important, because it means that everyone can see that every day when they walk in, and they know what they're working towards, and they know that we're not just doing this as an empty job. Basically, it's something that we're really striving towards achieving.
Yeah, and how do you stay on top of your workload? So obviously a lot of moving parts, working with, I guess, young people, like you said, 16 to 18-year-olds or 15 to 18-year-olds. It's probably not always the easiest thing. So how do you kind of stay on top of that and make sure you always got everything organised?
Yeah, I mean, it's one of those things that you develop as you work through your business, I guess. I've got a notepad as long as your arm, which is full of stuff, but I use my calendar a lot. We use management software as well to make sure that we can keep on top of all our tasks, helps us understand where we're at, what stuff is prioritized right now, what we've got coming up in the future. I think it's important because, like you said, we've got so many arms and so much going on, but also the stuff that we deal with is quite unpredictable day to day. Everything's unpredictable right now day to day, but especially education. So we use that software quite a lot just to make sure that everyone's in the know, and we can make sure everything gets finished as it's supposed to.
Definitely, yeah. And I know, speaking off the record earlier on, we're having a chat, you've got really embraced technology, especially for the learners, and that like kind of online portfolio. That, and I guess that made it a lot easier for you when all the restrictions came in, or as they are now, as we're sitting here in lockdown too.
Exactly that. I mean, we want, like I said, one of them things that you just have to embrace change sometimes. Sometimes challenges can provide the best results, if that makes sense, when you overcome a challenge. So we've had to develop our teaching methods to be able to deliver online. We've had to invest in an online portfolio so we can do work from the office. But it makes it so much more accessible, even without a pandemic or when we're out of the pandemic. I think we'll probably stick to quite a lot of the things that we've picked up throughout the last 6 to 8 months, just because it's so much more accessible for everybody. We appreciate that everyone's busy and not everyone has the time. So being able to access stuff online training on evenings or flexible times is just the way forwards, really, especially for us guys here.
Definitely the way forward. Personal question, Rob. So obviously we're on podcast. We haven't got the video for anyone to see, but obviously healthy man in shape. How do you do it? How do you keep it there? I know you got a young family, so time's limited, and you want to make the most of your family time. But what's your kind of daily routine, or any habits you've got to stay at like high performing, peak performance?
Yeah, I don't know about peak performance. I do my best, but like I do in work, I kind of approach my home life the same. Try and keep some structure, keep some routine. Me and my wife, we've got a young child, which is difficult to manage in itself. So making sure I set my alarm, get up at the same time every morning. Even my drive to work in the morning is 15 minutes to reflect on yesterday and the day ahead today. I mentioned before, I've got plenty of lists. Make sure I take lunch around the same time. Just helps me keep structure. I mean, it's not always possible, but I guess it helps you balance the home and life work as well. That was probably the most difficult thing through the pandemic. The fact that we didn't have the structure of the office to come to, and it was difficult to separate the two, home life, family life, and work. So I think that's really, really important to me, because the work is a passion of mine. It's something that I really focus on. Obviously, you still need to be able to turn off and enjoy life at home with family, because it's only fair.
Yeah, exactly. You want to have that focus on your family time as well, like, as your kids are growing up. No, brilliant. And finally, let me ask this question: if you could go back, let's say you could go back to, in your case, it might be even 15, 16, talk to Rob as he's finishing his GCSEs. What kind of advice would you tell yourself at that point? Would you go back and say to yourself, if anything?
Yeah, I think the thing I would probably go back and maybe not change the most, but the advice I would give is just to be open-minded, because there's not necessarily just one way to do something. There's often lots of alternatives. So, like I said, I it's slightly hypocritical. I did the mainstream, go to A-level, go to university, get myself a job. That's not necessarily the best pathway. And as we evolve over the years, it definitely changes. So yeah, I would definitely be a little bit more open-minded to the different opportunities, looking out for different ways to gain experience and that kind of stuff, for sure.
Yeah, I love that. Open-minded, always keep an open mind. So thanks so much, Rob. I mean, for giving up all your time. I mean, if our listeners want to get involved, you mentioned quite a lot of opportunities there. So if you're running a business, sports coaching business, if you're working at a college or sixth form, how would they get involved in or even a university? So how would they get involved with ISF? What are you looking for? Is there anything you're actively searching for at the moment or recruiting for?
Yeah, because the program's ever growing, we're always looking for new partners in lots of different areas. So we're always looking for new employer partners, so sports coaching organisations who are battling the same issues I mentioned earlier with employment issues, and who are looking to get involved and could offer some experience. So we're looking for those. We're also looking for university partners and other partners or anyone who might have employment opportunities afterwards. So if anyone has got any opportunities for young people to get involved in sport, we would love to hear from them. We'd love to discuss how we could create that partnership. So if you just get in touch with me at info@isf7.org and drop me a line and just let me know what angle you're coming from and what you'd like to get involved in, I'm sure there's something we could do to get a partnership up and running. Because like I said, the future for young people in sport is really bright, and the more people embrace it is better for us, I guess, and for the young people.
Brilliant. And we'll obviously add those in the show notes, your contact details for that. Just in terms of host sites, I know you're obviously expanding the range. Is that just for the UK at the moment, or are you interested in hearing from people outside of the UK who could potentially be partners?
Yeah, well, like I just said, James, my 16-year-old self will tell you now that it's important to keep an open mind. So although we are looking for UK partners, we would like to have partners all over the UK, different cities or in cities all over the UK. But we are also really keen to expand and look at the options for having partners across in the UAE, China, America, anything along those lines. So yeah, for anyone's listening and wants to improve their school provision or think we could add to their school provision, by all means get in touch, because we'd love to hear from them.
Fantastic. Right, Rob Brown, Director of ISF. Thanks for your time, mate.
Yeah,
And
thanks, James.
we'll catch up again soon, I'm sure.
Brilliant. Cheers.
Cheers,
Thanks,
mate.
James.
See you
Bye.
again. Bye. Thank you for listening to this week's show. You can subscribe anywhere you get your podcasts. If you'd like to get in touch with us, you can write to us at dryphase.podcast@coordinate.cloud, tweet us at coordinatesport, or follow us on Instagram at coordinate_sports, or on my account at James_Ventures. This episode was produced by Nancy Kwamboka, with support from Claire Goodchild and Lola Small, with special thanks to Rochelle. I'm James Moore, and you've been listening to The Drive Phase from Coordinate Sport.